soon as he entered the door, he was shooting from the hip and just spraying ammunition and just shooting everywhere indiscriminately.
I was just crying and screaming and telling them to call the police.
I just assumed I would die. In my head, when you get shot, you die, and that's what I was waiting for. And I kept saying to the girl who was with me, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die.
Because I'd left early in the morning, I hadn't kissed him, I hadn't said goodbye, and I just wondered if I ever would.
We know he's got high-powered weapons. We know he's got all sorts of ammunition, and there's no reason to believe he's gonna quit.
It's the middle of August 1999, and summer camp is in full swing at the North Valley Jewish Community Center in Granada Hills, California, a suburb of Los Angeles.
And it was just a regular summer day where you expect that your child might come home with a scrape on their knee or, you know, a sunburn or something. That's the worst that we ever thought would happen to them when they were here at camp.
Mindy Finkelstein, a counselor at the camp, has been coming to the center for as long as she can remember.
The North Valley Jewish Community Center was like a second home to me. I went to preschool and kindergarten there, and then pretty much every summer after that, I was a camper. In the summer of '99, I was 16 years old, and I was a junior camp counselor. I was in charge of 5- and 6-year-olds for 3 months.
That same summer, 6-year-old Josh Stepikoff is one of Mindy's favorite campers.
Summer camp here was a lot of fun. There was a lot of physical activities. We swam, played games. There was just a lot of friendships everywhere. Everyone had a lot of fun together.
The morning of August 10th starts out no differently. The children spend the first few hours of the day playing in the warm California sun before being taken inside for their next activity.
All right, come on, let's go.
So I was walking down from that end of the hall, from the grass field, and got to about 15 feet from the front door. And that's when he walked in.
Josh also spies the mysterious man from an adjacent hallway.
He had something by his side that to me looked identical to a mechanical drill that my dad had in the garage. So I thought he was just a construction worker. He started right over there. It just kind of sprayed all the way around. And then Mindy was right over here in front of me. I fell down and then got back up, and I ran as quick as I could that way, back outside. I just remembered that I had to get out of there. That's all I knew.
When you hear a machine gun, it sounds a lot like hammering. And so even though you recognize the sound and you feel the bullets enter your body, you still don't necessarily recognize instantly that you were shot. I grabbed the kid that was sitting next to me and ran directly in here. So I walked into this room, which was the arts and crafts room at the time, and all of the kids started pointing at me and asking, "What's on her leg? What's on her leg?" And it was blood from the shooting, but the other counselors in the room started saying, "Don't worry about it, it was just paint, it's just paint."
Get out,
In a panicked haze, counselors hustle the children one by one out an emergency exit door.
All the kids were in front of me, and they all ran down the street with the other counselors. And I just couldn't take it anymore, so I collapsed here in front of this brick wall.
No, I can't. Oh, if he finds it. Oh, what if he finds us? It doesn't matter, we have to.
I just assumed I would die because in my head, when you get shot, you die, and that's what I was waiting for.
Meanwhile, in the community center lobby, a frantic staffer calls 911.
And there's 60 or 70 in nursery school and staff.
Okay, listen, right? Do you have any idea if there was anybody?
I don't know. I'm underneath the desk.
I was in my office, and the watch commander came in and advised me that we had a shooting situation at the North Valley Jewish Community Center on Rinaldi. It had the potential of being a real catastrophe. When we first got to the scene, it was pretty chaotic in that the search was still ongoing. And the supervisor that was at scene made a decision that he was going to put together a search team and actually begin to search the location for the possible suspect.
Just steps inside the main building, Los Angeles Fire Department paramedics discover the bullet-riddled body of 5-year-old Ben Kadish, who is currently suffering from massive blood loss. On the way to the ambulance, he goes into hemorrhagic shock, but paramedics are unable to start an IV due to collapsed veins. At about the same time, Ben's parents get the shock of their lives.
I received grim news, and they weren't even sure how severe it really was, or they didn't want to tell us how severe it was. I just remember feeling like I was dying inside. That's indescribable.
They decided to take him out of protocol on an ambulance 2 miles away. It was crucial because he had lost up to 60% of his blood.
First responders escort the remaining children to a nearby church where paramedics tend to the wounded. But everyone is still a potential target.
They had cut off my shorts and were working on me, and they were like, don't worry, your injuries don't seem life-threatening, so I think you'll be okay. But I was still really concerned because I remember hearing helicopters.
Just a few feet away, Joshua Stepikoff can barely comprehend what's happening. Bullets have pierced his left leg and hip, and emergency workers know that time is not on their side.
I was riding down the street in the ambulance, and one of the paramedics said, close your eyes and don't open them till we tell you, and keep your mouth shut. Because they didn't want dust and everything that was flying around from the propellers to fly into my mouth and into my eyes. I mean, I didn't really know that I was getting into a helicopter until I was in the helicopter. And then they said, you can open your eyes.
Meanwhile, in Los Angeles,
My husband told me that there was a gunman at the JCC. And I was standing at my desk with the phone to my ear, trying really to understand what that meant. I was listening to the radio on the way, and the news reports were saying that 6- and 8-year-old boys had been shot, and those were the ages of my 2 boys. And because I'd left early in the morning, I hadn't kissed him. I hadn't said goodbye. And I just wondered if I ever would.
Scores of distraught parents soon descend on the center to find utter chaos.
And all they knew was that there was a shooting at this Jewish community center and that kids had been injured. They didn't know whose kids. There were people trying to get into the church where the kids were, literally to find out if their kids had been shot. That was a very horrific scene right there, because the police couldn't let them in. What if a parent scooped up a child and ran home with them to protect them? And now we don't know if that child's missing or whether we need to look for them. We had to do certain things before the parents could come in, and it was a very, very tense scene on that line.
5 victims are taken to area hospitals, including 3 young children.
I was laying in the hospital bed, and actually there was like a TV in the upper left-hand corner, and the shots of the TV were from helicopters straight down. The image I have is me laying in a pool of blood. And then I was like, have they called my parents?
Within an hour of the shooting, multiple investigative agencies have gathered at the scene, including the FBI.
I went directly to the scene, You can spend hours getting on the phone and trying to find the right people. There is nothing like being right there, because if it is what you're afraid it is, you need to start working right away, and the place you work is right there.
After a thorough search of all buildings on the property, the LAPD announces that the gunman has left the premises. For the FBI and police, it's just the beginning of a roller coaster investigation that will take them into some of the darkest corners of the criminal world. But for the parents, it's the start of something much more terrifying.
I heard a police officer with a bullhorn calling for the parents of Joshua Stepikoff. So I went under the police line, and he confirmed who I was, and he just took me by the shoulders, and he kept saying, "He'll be okay. He's gonna be okay." And I just kept saying, "Where is he?"
About an hour after a gunman opens fire on innocent children at a Los Angeles community center, local and federal authorities are in a scramble to find the shooter.
There is so much information coming in that it's just all you can do to try and keep up. It's like drinking out of a fire hose. There were certain things that we heard repeatedly. White male. That we could pretty much count on. Nobody contradicted white male.
At that time, it was only believed there was one suspect involved, but we weren't completely positive about that. We received a general description of a white man in his 40s, and that he had left, and someone had seen him leave in a red van.
Inside the community center, police searched through the debris, looking for any clue that could shed light on the shooter's identity.
It wasn't until an hour or two later that I actually saw the level of devastation, the broken glass, the blood, the shell casings, all that. It was pretty horrific. We could see the shell casings. We could see that they were large caliber rounds, and they were probably fired from some type of an assault weapon.
Investigators quickly realized that the shooter is equipped with high-powered weapons and trained to use them for maximum damage. This points them in the direction of a specific kind of perpetrator.
My first thought, my first belief was that it was likely an attack by a white supremacist group due to the fact that this was a Jewish community center. If it's a workplace violence situation, everybody's going to know who the shooter is. If it's a spousal situation, somebody's going to know who that was. Secondarily, I do not think even in a workplace shooting that you're going to shoot children. The victims themselves were telling me that this likely was somebody who really was motivated out of hate. I mean, who shoots children?
Still, at this stage, it's impossible to say for sure who's responsible or why anyone would open fire on a group of young kids. But there's one thing investigators do know. Their shooter could be anywhere by now, and there's no telling what he'll do next.
He's probably armed. We have no reason to believe he's finished, and yet we can't do anything about it. When people are getting shot, it's agonizing, waiting for the next lead, because you're afraid the next lead is going to be another shooting, and that's no way to run things.
Then, approximately an hour after the shooting, the command post receives a call about a strange carjacking just 5 miles away.
I just felt strongly at the time that that was going to be our lead, and as it turned out, it was.
I didn't know what to do. I just freaked out. Close the door and I turn around.
The detectives interviewed a woman who told them that a man had pointed a gun at her.
Get in the car now.
And demanded her vehicle. I went to the van and began loading his ammunition and guns from the van into the Toyota. When he was busy doing that, she ran from the car.
Inside the abandoned van, police find what's left of a small arsenal, a cache of high-powered weapons, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition.
we knew that we had a continuing problem, because he didn't just hijack the car and leave. He hijacked the car and put his guns and ammo in it. He's not finished.
But just when it looks like things can't get any worse for investigators, another lead comes into the command center about a seemingly random incident in the nearby neighborhood of Chatsworth. According to eyewitness accounts, 39-year-old mail carrier Joseph Aledo is making his second stop of the day on a residential route when a stranger approaches him.
Excuse me, can you help me out? I've got some letters to mail. Can you mail them for me?
Sure. At that point, the shooter pulls a handgun out. Aledo starts running full run, and the shooter just tracks him with the gun and hits him. Kills him, drops him right there.
I was working at that time as a delivery person, and along my route, everybody was tuned in on the news. It was a shooting rampage at the North Valley Jewish Community Center, and the images of kids being escorted out was pretty dramatic. And then they would show a postal van, and they were saying that a postal worker was killed. And I was thinking to myself, oh, this poor guy was just doing his job, which I can kind of relate to because that's what I was doing too.
These gentlemen came at my door and they asked me if I knew Joseph Aledo, and I said, of course. And I said, well, he's not here right now. He's probably at work. And that's when they, broke the news to me. And I went into denial right away. I said, you have the wrong person. That is not my brother. They were asking me questions, if he has any enemies, and I said, no. You have the wrong person. He doesn't have any enemies. You have the wrong person.
It's not until about 4 p.m. that afternoon when my wife called me and told me that the postal worker was Joe.
Back at the command post in Granada Hills, the task force considers whether the two shootings could be related.
The Jewish Community Center shooter came in with an Uzi on full automatic and sprayed the place from the hip. And at that point, nobody was dead. The guy who shot the postal carrier made a surgical shot with a pistol. He said, why change? Why change in the middle? I mean, these are the things that you argue about. You are trying desperately to get the right answer.
Another question centers on the victims themselves. A JCC summer camp and a random mail carrier. What's the connection?
The reason I thought Aledo's shooting was related was simply that it was too coincidental. I just didn't believe that you were going to get another shooting in broad daylight within 5 miles of this location on that day.
As investigators work the two crime scenes, the shooter's original victims and their families gather at area hospitals. 5-year-old Benjamin Kadish remains in critical condition.
He was shot twice. He had an entrance wound and an exit wound, plus all the different things that it had torn into. I think we learned that evening that he had to have a colostomy bag because his colon was shot through. He also had to have some leg apparatus because his femur on his left leg was completely blown away. After 7 hours of surgery, we saw what he looked like, and it was devastating. He didn't look like the same little boy we sent off to camp.
I tried to reassure myself that I was going to be okay and to be strong for him when I saw him. And I just remember approaching him, and I remember taking his hand, and I kissed his hand. I'll never forget this for the rest of my life.
As the day went on, it got more and more frustrating because we know he's out there, we know he's got high-powered weapons, we know he's got all sorts of ammunition. He's attacked once, he may have attacked a second time, and there's no reason to believe he's gonna quit.
The FBI is the sole investigative force for criminal violations of federal civil rights statutes. In 2005, it conducted 380 hate crime investigations. In August 1999, Los Angeles, California suburbanites are racked with fear as federal and local authorities search for a gunman and a possible connection to a seemingly random crime spree.
Here we've got the shooting of kids at the center. We've got a carjacking that occurred a short distance away. We've got a shooting of a postal worker. And we suddenly realize that all three of these are actually related. So we've got 3 different crime scenes that we have to manage, and we still haven't got the suspect.
It was unknown to us, you know, number one, where he was at, and if he was loaded, still loaded to the gills, I'm gonna do another crime.
Inside the perpetrator's abandoned van, investigators collect a stash of weapons, ammunition, a flak jacket, freeze-dried food, white supremacist literature, and a map highlighting specific targets. LA's Museum of Tolerance, the Skirball Cultural Center, and the American Jewish University.
Our biggest fear was he's hit one Jewish location. Is he going to hit other Jewish locations? We were connecting with anybody in the community who could get the word out that things were not as safe that day as they usually were.
Back at the command center, a run of the van's tags determine it is registered to a man in Washington state named Tom Donaldson. Bureau special agents are dispatched immediately to his residence. Meanwhile, LA agents focus on the literature found in the van, which leads them to a well-known Christian identity group, the Aryan Nations. According to the Anti-Defamation League, many adherents believe that whites of European descent are the true children of God and that Jews and non-whites are evil. Its racist and anti-Semitic beliefs are usually accompanied by extreme anti-government sentiments.
I had investigated white supremacists since '85 and was fairly familiar with the Aryan Nations and those types of groups.
This raises concerns among investigators because soldiers in these violent extremist groups tend to be well-armed, well-trained, willing to kill, and often willing to die for their cause.
We contacted every single person we could talk to in the Aryan Nation movement. We contacted every source we could find, everybody we knew in Southern California to find out what they knew, if they knew him. The more we found out that nobody knew about this, that put a little bit of doubt into my mind. Could I be wrong? Could we be barking up the wrong tree? But at the same time, there's a thing called the lone wolf attack, where a person who's going to do one of these things doesn't tell anybody, so nobody has culpable knowledge.
That afternoon in Tacoma, Washington, FBI agents close in on Tom Donaldson, the owner of the van used in the shooting at the Jewish Community Center.
You never know who would be there. Supporters, maybe it's a safe house that he intended to go back to. We had no idea.
It's the FBI! Exit the home.
Agents surrounded the house, knocked on the door aggressively and assertively asked the people to come out of their house.
But within moments, Donaldson emerges from the house without any sign of hesitation or resistance.
You don't have to be an agent long to be able to read a situation and say, these people are scared to death. They know nothing about what's going on, and they have a plausible explanation that they traded the van in. They showed them paperwork. They were no longer the registered owners of the van. They had traded the van in just a few days beforehand, and the paperwork hadn't caught up with the DMV system.
I didn't know it was the same van, though.
While Washington FBI agents work to locate the van's current owner, 6-year-old Josh Stepikoff remains in critical condition at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles.
He had one bullet that had gone straight through the bone in his leg, so his leg was broken. And he had a second bullet that entered his hip and traveled around really very close to his spine, missed a number of internal organs that it could have hit on the way around. The police at the time really didn't know exactly what the motive for the shooting was, but it seemed, that it was a targeted shooting against particular people. They didn't have the perpetrator in hand yet, and so there was concern for Josh's safety.
5 hours after the initial shooting, Los Angeles police finally discover the suspect's stolen car outside a Chatsworth hotel 8 miles from the scene.
The information we got at that point was that the green Toyota had been found in the parking lot of a hotel, which really fit with one scenario, that he was tired and he thought he got away clean with the green Toyota, that nobody had seen him, and that he needed a break. And so we thought we had him.
The officers who found the vehicle looked inside and saw ammunition, weapons, and we put a perimeter and evacuated everybody in the immediate area away from the vehicle. We were thinking perhaps that vehicle was booby-trapped, and we called our bomb squad in to examine it.
Once the car is rendered safe, an LAPD SWAT team makes plans to search the hotel.
They were going to have to go room by room by room and evacuate people and clear out, knowing that the guy you're looking for may have a machine gun in that room.
Room by room, an LAPD SWAT team is scouring the Chatsworth Hotel just outside of Los Angeles. They're looking for the suspect in a series of shootings who's armed and extremely dangerous. After a grueling 11-hour search of the premises, authorities determine that their shooter is not inside.
When the motel was found to be empty, it was kind of a hard moment. Not only were we tired, there was a sense of failure. We hadn't gotten him.
Meanwhile, Washington FBI agents have tracked the red van used by their suspect to a used car dealership in Tacoma.
We had a purchase contract for the van on a certain day in Tacoma, Washington, and 3 or 4 days later, that van is down in Los Angeles.
The purchaser of the vehicle is Buford Furrow.
Once we were able to get a photograph of this person, it fit the general description of the person that was described to us at the community center.
Bingo. I remember where I was standing, an agent came out of the command post. He had a photograph of Furrow, and he said, "Here's your guy." We were able in Washington to pull down a complete dossier on him. He was an engineer, and he had worked for the company that was building the stealth bomber. And so he actually had to submit a 17-page application for a secret clearance.
Investigators finally get a break when the background check provides an address along with names of the suspect's close friends and family members.
Once we had his identification and his photo, we were in a serious manhunt. We believed that he was probably going to repeat what he did here in Los Angeles, and we had no idea where that might be. If it was going to be again somewhere in Los Angeles or some other city, perhaps even another state, that we need to find this guy, and we need to find him fast.
But with each passing hour, authorities know that the suspect could be getting farther and farther away. Desperate to close the net on him, police waste no time releasing Furrow's name and photograph to the media.
We're putting this information continually out on the airwaves, hoping the public would spot him and tell us. We continue to broadcast not only to our police officers, but to every law enforcement agency in the nation.
At Holy Cross Medical Center, Mindy Finkelstein sees her attacker's face for the first time.
The news put up a picture of his face. I flipped. And that was my first thoughts of utter hatred for a person. That was my first real feeling that this was an individual that did this. This is a person who needs to be punished. This is a person who did this for reasons that don't make sense to me.
At Children's Hospital, 5-year-old Ben Kadish remains unconscious.
As soon as he got to Children's Hospital, the surgery started all over again. He had to have other surgeries. They had to keep the breathing tube in him.
His breathing, his heartbeat started racing because he sensed that I was there with him. So I just wanted to give him reassurance that he was going to be okay, and told him I loved him. And
I don't know if I'm like other people, but we didn't even think about the person that did it or where he was or what was going on. We thought about Ben and kept him on our mind the whole time, and that was probably what got us through the day.
The FBI's next step is to begin building a profile of the suspect. Buford O'Neill Furrow was an only child. His father served in the Air Force, so the family moved around. After graduating from high school in 1979, he enlisted in the Army, but was discharged soon afterwards due to a bad knee. Eventually, he became an engineer and worked briefly for a defense contractor in Palmdale, California. But after losing his job, Furrow began a downward spiral. Over the next few years, he became interested in the white supremacy movement, and the interest soon grew into an obsession. In the early 1990s, he found his way to the Aryan Nations compound in Hayden Lake, Idaho. There, he met Debbie Matthews, widow of Christian identity martyr Robert Matthews.
In 1984, the Aryan Nations had a group of men that called themselves the Order. They ended up killing Alan Berg, a DJ in Denver. They did an armored car robbery. They were on basically a criminal run. The leader of the group was a guy named Bob Matthews.
The Order's crime spree came to an end in December 1984, when the FBI surrounded Robert Matthews at his hideout and ordered him to surrender. A violent exchange followed, and the compound caught fire. Matthews died in the blaze.
And when Buford Furrow joined the Aryan Nation, he struck up a relationship with Debbie and married her. So we knew that he was a serious Aryan Nation player.
But the marriage didn't last. Investigators learned that Furrow had recently become unstable. As it turns out, 10 months prior to the shootings in Los Angeles, Furrow showed up at a psychiatric hospital saying he was having suicidal thoughts and urges to kill others. He went to the facility to commit himself, but arrived drunk, and instead of getting help, he got arrested.
We had his arrest record for pulling a knife on the nurse when he was trying to commit himself to the hospital. But these type of background investigations are kind of slow because they come from person to person, and you're having to interview dozens of people to get that information.
Furrow was released from custody in May of 1999, but his behavior was becoming more and more erratic. Furrow spent the 4th of July with Debbie Matthews at her ranch, hoping for a reconciliation. But just days before his violent rampage in Los Angeles, she called and told him that he'd need to sign a prenuptial agreement first, and Furrow simply became enraged. Authorities believe this is when he began planning his rampage.
I believe he came to Los Angeles because it's a media center. If you are going to throw your life away doing something like this, as well as the lives of all your victims, for your cause or for whatever it is, you certainly want to get credit for what you do. And I think Buford wanted credit for what he did. I believe he wanted to be a better Aryan than Debbie Matthews' husband, Bob. She used to tell him, you're no Bob Matthews. That's why he did it. Had nothing to do with Judaism. It had to do with Debbie.
Investigators take some solace in attaching a suspect and a motive to the JCC shootings. But questions about the Aledo killing linger, and the fact remains that Buford Furrow is still armed, still dangerous, and still at large.
We have the red van, we have the green Toyota, we have an empty hotel, and Furrow's not in it. He could be a block from where we were, he could be anywhere.
"17 hours after spurned gunman Buford Furrow shoots 5 people and murders a postal carrier in suburban LA, investigators are no longer closer to finding him and are certain he will strike again.
I was beat and I was disappointed. I got home at about 4 that morning, and I remember vividly walking in the door, trying to explain to my wife that, you know, she was watching the news. She knew where I was. She kept seeing me on camera, in the background. And so I just told her we didn't get him. That was hard. And then my kids at the time were 8, 6, and 4, and I just needed to go in and spend some time with them. So Crazy Daddy woke him up around 4:30 and just sat there and laid in bed with him for a while until I could go to sleep. It's kind of the reverse of what usually happened. And so I probably got to bed around 5.
Sometime during the evening hours of August 10th, 1999, Buford Furrow manages to escape from Los Angeles by paying a taxi driver $800 to take him to Las Vegas, Nevada. Then, at 8:55 a.m., 23 hours after he opened fire at the Jewish Community Center in Los Angeles, Buford Furrow enters the FBI field office in Las Vegas and turns himself in.
Las Vegas? You got to be kidding me. I was dumbfounded. I just, after being awake till 5 in the morning and seeing the carnage and then getting very little sleep, to be woken up and told that he's in Las Vegas and that he turned himself in, it still doesn't compute.
The FBI will give me a fair shake.
Furrow said he turned himself into the FBI because he had done what he felt like he needed to do, which is he had made a statement to the world about how he hated Jews and people of color and people who worked for the federal government. And he wanted to go into the FBI because he felt that the FBI wouldn't abuse him if he went into federal custody.
I felt a real sense of relief knowing that he was off the streets and he wasn't going to be able to hurt anybody else.
Investigators from the FBI, ATF, LAPD, and other agencies immediately fly to Las Vegas to interview the suspect.
They had already told me that he liked to be called Neil. They said, "Neil, this is the guy from Los Angeles, the FBI agent from Los Angeles." And he looked at me and he said, "You're the guy who's going to try to fry me, aren't you?" And I said, "I'm not here to do anything but listen." And that's how we started. He spoke about what he had done so candidly and openly, without any kind of shame, as if what he had done was heroic, and that he was being humble in his heroism for what he had done. We learned that he had come down the day before and cased all sorts of places in LA. He went to the Museum of Tolerance. That was his first target, but he saw the security and decided that he probably wouldn't make it out alive. He saw several other Jewish targets cruising the streets of LA. Most of them he didn't feel he would get a big enough body count. So he got off the freeway at Rinaldi because he was running out of gas. And he turned the wrong way and drove past the Jewish Community Center. That's how he found it. He shot Joseph Aletto because he said he was essentially fair game because he was a federal employee and he was non-white. And the Aryan Nations doesn't officially recognize the United States as a legitimate government.
That evening, one day after the LA shootings, Buford Furrow is extradited to Los Angeles for arraignment on charges of murder, felony use of a firearm, and felony possession. He pleads guilty to all charges. At his sentencing, he apologizes to all the victims and their families, claiming he is mentally ill, but they aren't buying it.
He was a Filipino American that happened to work for the post office. A lot of times it's just described as a postal worker. And to us, that's not enough because he was killed mainly because of the color of his skin.
As for the children of the North Valley Jewish Community Center, they're all survivors, but each lost a piece of themselves that day. 5-year-old Ben Kadish didn't regain consciousness until 5 days after the shooting.
I remember him being in a wheelchair for a very, very long time. And he couldn't do anything on his own anymore. The 5-year-old independent little boy was suddenly dependent upon everyone to help him, and that's just not him.
I was shot because I'm Jewish, and I don't think it's fair, but when I tell someone what happened, I tell them it was because I'm Jewish. It's anti-Semitism, and I don't think it's right.
The innocence of a child having his life almost taken away from him, you look at things a little bit differently now than we did before.
My emotional recovery took a few years. People don't just get shot and they're fine. You have to have some recovery process, and not just physical. You have to make sense of it in your head, and you need to understand that you were a victim, and you're not just gonna be like, oh, he's not gonna get to me, I survived, I'm a survivor. You have to go through some form of victimization process.
It had a hold on me for so long. And when I heard sirens, helicopters, loud noises, I would kind of go into lockdown. Went on for a long time, and it was something that controlled me. And I mean, I don't think I will ever fully recover, but I've done just about as good as I can.
I was, believe it or not, fascinated by why he would go into the Jewish Community Center and fire from the hip. And then when he confronts the postal carrier, shoots very accurately. I didn't understand that. He never gave me a satisfactory answer for why he shot from the hip in the Jewish Community Center.
In March 2001, Buford O. Furrow was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
There was enough mental health information collected from examining Mr. Furrow to suggest that perhaps the death penalty might not have been appropriate in this case.
He is currently serving his sentence at the United States Penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana.
I don't think you can necessarily say that good comes out of something like this, but if there is any good that came out of it, the Aryan nations never recovered from the aftermath of this. Not just as a physical entity, but as a concept. It just died. Furrow once told me in an interview about a year after the shooting that at night the screams of the kids would wake him up. Sometimes the screams of the kids would wake me up too. You think about it, you dream about it, and you can't let it go until you feel you've done right by the victims.